Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today we are going to talk about Vegega raised metal beds. Now, just so you know, I am an affiliate for Vegega, and if you'd like to check them out, just check out the links down below. And I do have a 10% code for you that I'll link down there. But I absolutely love Vegega raised metal beds. Now, I purchased my first one last year, and I'll show you what that one looks like. And then I purchased another one, and then Vegega sent me another one, and now I purchased 3 more and actually gotten one for my daughter that she's using. So today we're going to set up the 3 newest ones, and I've actually got them put together because that is the boring part, but we're going to show you a little bit about how we fill them, and we're also going to talk a little bit about hugelkultur. So those are the topics that we're going to cover today, and I'm glad you're here for it. So let's look at the first Vegega raised metal bed that I purchased and show you what I'm using it for. So this is my lower garden area, and there's 4 raised metal beds here, and this is the first one that I purchased. This is their round bed, and I absolutely love it. Now, when I first filled this bed, about half of it ended up being this bark mulch. Then I used some compost mulch that I was using to mulch the front yard. And then I put some bagged compost and peat moss and vermiculite in here. And what I have in here, you can see it starting to grow, and I'll show you a picture of what they look like full grown. These are Jerusalem artichokes. And the purpose for this bed is to completely contain them. And they are coming up all around the edges right now. You can see the new growth there. So this is the second bed that I purchased, and this is the one that Vegega sent to me. Now, one worry that I had with raised metal beds is, especially on the south side of the house, is that since they're metal, they would get really, really hot and cook the roots of the vegetables. But even though last year we hit 100 degrees and a little above that, I did not notice that issue. Another thing that I noticed is that the soil inside these beds over the winter, I overwintered some winter crops in here, and they did not have any issues. The soil didn't freeze, and they did really, really well. Right now, I planted tomatoes early, and I'll link a video up at the top that shows you about why I planted the tomatoes so early. Right now we're trying to protect them with a jug of water. Actually, there's 2 of them in here. We've got a frost cloth covering them, and then we've got them covered in plastic. So this is a little bit of overkill. The temperatures are only getting into the low 40s at night, but what I wanted to do is kind of see if I could protect the tomatoes enough that we don't end up having blossom end rot. Blossom end rot is a problem that is caused by the plant's inability to uptake calcium. Now, stress can cause that, uneven watering can cause that, and cold stress is really a major one. I'm trying to protect the plants so that we don't end up having any blossom end rot, and we'll see how that works. So now that we've showed you my beds that are in use, let's show you the new ones and show you a little bit about how they're put together and talk about why I like these so much. So here's my 3 new ones. And I actually had my daughter come over yesterday just so that I could have fun with her. Although she did call it slave labor, but you know, I thought it was fun. Anyway, I had her help me level these beds and sink them into the ground a little bit so they are closer to the height of this bed right here. Now, I sunk this bed into the ground so that it would contain the Jerusalem artichokes a little bit better. So these beds are sunk into the ground, and right now I actually have cardboard down in them. The cardboard is not going to be for any weed suppression because I don't have any weed issues here in this food forest. I call this my food forest. I don't have any weed issues here. This is just a good way to get rid of extra cardboard. But let's show you how easy these beds are to put together. If you look right here, there are 4 screws. Actually, you can only see 3 right there. Let me see if I can. There's the 4th one down there. There's only 4 screws. It takes about 20 minutes for me to put these beds together. And they send the tool so you don't even need any extra tools. The other thing they send with these is a bar, and this bar it just screws into one of the screws on the outside of the bed. So here's the screw on the outside of the bed that is screwed into the bar. This helps the sides not bow out very much. You could put as many of these bars in here as you want. I figured this bed would only need 1. And I put 2 in this one. Now the other thing that I love is that bed and this bed right here are the exact same kit and the exact same size. You can just put them together in different configurations. So this one, I have the end panels on it, and so I made a wider bed. This one's about, I think it's 3.5 by 6.5. I'll have to look on the website. You can look on the website and see the size of that. But it's a beautifully sized bed. I love that one. And then this one over here, I didn't use the end panels on the end. I put them on the sides, so we made a long skinny bed. So this is approximately 2 feet by 8 feet. And the same with that one. Now, another neat thing that I just noticed on their website is they have trellises that you can attach with the screws on the sides of the bed. I don't know exactly how well they work, but they look pretty sturdy because you screw them into more than one of those screws. So I have considered trying out those trellises, but I haven't done it yet, and I probably won't do it this year. So now we're going to talk to you a little bit about how I fill these beds before I put the soil in. The soil is very, very expensive. I bought some good garden soil, and we'll talk about that next week when we put it in, why I chose what I chose. We're going to add some compost and some vermiculite, and that's really expensive. I calculated out that for these 3 raised metal beds, we're going to need 2 cubic yards, which is about $90 worth of soil, plus the delivery fee, which is another $80. So that's a lot of money just to be putting soil in the beds. So I wanted to save some money, and there's a lot of videos online about how people use other materials at the bottom of their beds to save space. So let's talk to you a little bit about what I'm using at the bottom of my beds and why I'm using it. Now right here we have a huge pile of fruit tree prunings and branches that fell out of these giant cottonwoods last fall. And this was going to be a lot of garbage. We have a little bit of leaves left in there. And I did not want to have to saw these down and throw them in my garbage can. I needed a way to use them. And so we are going to use them in these beds. We're going to line them at the bottom of the beds and use those. I also have a few leaves over here. This is actually a pile that I've walked all over, a pile of leaves that we're just going to toss in this bed. Now, if you watch a lot of gardening videos, you're going to see several videos on permaculture, and they're going to talk a lot about hugelkultur. Now, hugelkultur is the process of building your garden on mounds. And they liken it to the way the forest floors are created, where you have logs that fall, and leaves that fall on top of that, and other branches, and then it slowly decomposes into soil. Now, I personally am not using this method to create more soil. I'm not using this method so that my garden beds will retain water, as is promoted in a lot of videos that talk about hugelkultur, because I really don't think that's the way it's going to work in my climate. So I live in Utah, which is zone 6/7, and we are an extremely, extremely dry state. There's not a lot of moisture that falls out of the sky. I have to irrigate most of my garden beds. And those logs are not going to decompose very fast. It may take years, it may even take decades. And they're not going to be retaining an awful lot of water. The leaves and the hay will probably break down pretty quickly, but also when leaves and hay break down, they do sequester the nitrogen in the soil. The microorganisms that break those down use a lot of the nitrogen when they break things like straw and leaves down. So I am going to have to remember to add a little bit more nitrogen to each of my beds. So the reason that I'm going to use it is just for a space filler. It's not going to be harmful to my beds as long as I remember to add a little bit of nitrogen. So let's get these beds filled. We'll show you how deep I put the sticks, twigs, and logs. And then the next video will be when I add the soil. The soil is not going to be arriving until Tuesday. So let's get busy and get this finished. Well, that took a little while and it's getting late, but I want to show you what it looks like. And then the last thing I want to do is add this pile of old potting soil that I brought out, and well, let's just show you what it looks like. Now, when adding sticks and things to your raised meadow beds, one thing you want to be careful of is not to put them on top of the support rod. If you put them on top of the support rod, you run the risk of, when you add the weight of the soil on top of that, pulling the sides of the raised bed in, because the weight will push down on the rod and pull the sides in. So with all of these, they're about half full of sticks and twigs. With all of these, I made sure that they were under the metal rods and not over the top. Now, as I said, the last thing that I want to do is take this pile of old potting soil. So I had used this potting soil in my grow room and none of the plants would grow in it. I'm not exactly sure what's wrong with it, but we're going to put it at the bottom of all of our beds and hopefully it should be okay there. It'll be another filler. Pile is gone. We incorporated as much as we could into the sticks so it's not at the top of the pile, and when I bring the soil in next week, I'm going to make sure that I get the soil incorporated in with the sticks. Now it's really late, a storm's starting to roll in. I'm sure you can hear the wind, so we're going to end this video here, but hopefully it was helpful to you and you can see how raised meadow beds work. One reason to use the hugelkultur method, especially in arid climates. And I'd like to hear what you use in your raised meadow beds. Do you do the hugelkultur method or do you just fill it completely full of soil? If so, what kind of soil do you use? I'd love to hear. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you. If it has been helpful, I hope you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.